Hi, I'm Kate Raworth. I'm here because I'm a renegade economist. Just a question. Put up your hand if you ever studied economics at school or university. Okay, a smattering. So, congratulations if you did. Congratulations if you didn't. You may have saved yourself the 20th century intellectual baggage that many of us carry. I've got a lot of it. But if you didn't, don't get too pleased with yourself, because even if you never studied economics, it definitely studied you. We all swim in the economic water. Our culture is based in a deeply economic mindset, and I want to just make some of that visible to us right now. And I want to focus particularly on humanity and our relationship to the rest of the living world. So in economics, if you studied 20th century economics, the character of humanity is placed at the heart of it. It's called rational economic man. Now, his portrait, his physical picture, is never actually drawn in the textbooks. He's described in equations, but pictures matter, you know that. So I decided to give him a portrait, and he'd have to look something like this. He'd be a man, he's got no dependents, stands alone, he's got money in his hand, that's how he interacts with the world. He's got ego in his heart, he's got a calculator in his head, and nature at his feet. Dominion over everything. He hates work, he loves luxury, he knows the price of it all. Trouble with this character, and it's been proven in research, is that the more the students learn about rational economic man, the more they actually seek to emulate him, the more they value competition over collaboration, the more they value self-interest over altruism. So who we tell ourselves we are shapes who we become. And if we think of ourselves at the peak of nature, we see nature's materials as our resources, like Lego blocks to make things out of, and then discard and find some new ones. And this goes so closely together with the industrial system that we've inherited. It's linear industrial design. We take, make, use, lose. And I don't want this to be entirely conceptual, so grab some real-world materials and ask for the help of my wonderful fellow panelists. Ta-da! My wonderful assistants. Hold these together. Amanda, that's it. So this is, aren't they wonderful? The linear industrial system that we've inherited, right? What we do is we take Earth's material, stick it in the pipe of production. We make it into stuff we want. We use it, often only once, and then throw it away. And then we chuck the waste out the bottom, and it goes away. This is what is causing the climate crisis, an ecological breakdown. We are pushing ourselves over planetary boundaries, running down the life support systems of this only known living planet in the universe. So, we have to first recognize we are not at the peak of the pyramid of the web of life. We are a member of it, embedded within it. And I'm so glad the web of life is on the stage behind us with its beautiful set. We are part of that web and utterly dependent upon it. And so we need to make economic systems and material systems that respect and recognize and dance with that. We need to separate the materials we have into the ecological, the natural, that would, if we put them back in the ground, that would just decompose, and nature would brilliantly bring them back as a peacock or a cloud or a flower or something else. And the technical materials, human-made materials, that we've changed. And so they won't decompose because we've transformed them. And we need to bend the arrows around and make circular loops. And it's not as easy as it looks. I have to let you know, it's not, right? And that's why we're here, because it's not as easy as it looks. So this is what nature does. She just regenerates. She's got this incredible generosity of regenerating life again and again. We need to enable all natural fibers and materials, cotton and wood and anything in this room that's natural. How can it be used until it ultimately can only be reused by decomposing? And then with human-made materials, they won't decompose. So we need to mimic nature by sharing what we have, repairing it, restoring it, refurbishing it, reinventing it, only ultimately recycling it, but never thinking we're going to throw it away, because there is no away. Could you give them a round of applause? This is so, yeah, there we are. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And of course, bits come out, right? Nothing is ever perfectly circular, so we need to use them with great care. Now, how do we create this circular, regenerative economy where we see ourselves as part of the living world. It's so easy to stand on a stage and talk about it. How are you going to bring it alive in your theatres and your productions? And this is where we get serious. I offer you 5 deep design traits of organizations, and I invite you to think, whether it's your theatre, your production, think about these design traits, because this is what determines whether or not we're stuck in the linear, degenerative world, using up Earth's materials, or whether we can actually move to a regenerative one where we see ourselves and become part of the web of life. So, think these through for yourselves. First, what is your purpose? Why does your theatre or your production even exist? What is it in service of in the world? How can it help to meet the needs of all people, bringing us back within the means of the planet, tackling climate and ecological crisis? What steps can it take towards that? Second, the networks of relationship. All the relationships you have with your actors, your team, your suppliers, your audience, those you procure from, those you pass on the materials to. Do you live out those values? Can you create that regenerative relationship with them? And what would it take? And Rufus was starting to talk about that. Give us lead time, give us warning, so that we actually have the time to care and to use materials and energy well. Governance. How is your theatre governed? Who's in the room? Who has the seat at the table? Who has voice? Does nature have a voice? You know, the shampoo company Faith and Nature have recently given nature a voice on the board, held by an environmental lawyer. What if every theatre actually literally had a place on the board for nature, saying, this is what nature would want us to do. Take it into account in our decisions. What are the metrics of success of your theatre, of your production, and how do they govern fulfilling your purpose? Let's go deeper, right? This board is like psychotherapy. The deeper we go, the more profound it gets. So how is the theatre owned? Is it privately owned? Is it owned by a local authority? Is it a charity? Because how it's owned is obviously going to have a huge implication for how it's financed. Is the money coming from grants? Is it coming from earned income? Is it coming from sponsorship? What's the balance, the tension between these? And these 5 design traits, of course, are dancing in tension a lot of the time. And they're often touching on issues that are never discussed. I've talked about this with many companies and organizations, and the first thing people say is, you mean we're actually going to talk about this? We're actually going to talk about how we're owned and sponsored and financed. Yes, we have to, because culture may be, as Rob Hopkins says, a prime way to transform, but culture sits in institutions, and institutions have deep design, and you're always connected to how things are governed and owned and financed, and that is shaping the water in that you're working. So ask yourself, is your theatre ultimately actually driven by the way it's owned and financed, and that's pushing back against your purpose, which in the worst case scenario just ends up as a nice strapline on the website? Or are you really able to hold that purpose and align the networks of who you choose to work with and who you don't choose to work with, how it's governed, who has voice and the metrics, how you're owned, and ultimately that finance, where it's coming from, what it's asking for, what it's giving, so that you can align those together? So I invite you to think not only about the design of the materials in your productions, but the deep design of your organizations, because that is where we ultimately need to transform. Thank you.